Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, want to thank you for allowing to take a recess so that we can go back to making sure we get the proper information. And I thank you for that. We stayed back a little bit working with DOA officials and the Office of Technology staff, and we requested to provide a narrative breakdown on the items that in contractual and capital outlay, and they provided that to us this morning, and I believe it's on everybody's desk, and I hope everyone can review that. And does everybody have a copy? Now, I'll just like to basically share again that in the letter provided by DOA and the Office of Technology, they clearly outline that these items, as I was stating yesterday, were primarily a lot of items that were actually under the data processing, the former data processing division, and has now basically transferred under the Office of Technology. And one of the new items here that was pointed out yesterday by the previous speaker was capital outlay, and there's some brief details there that states that the $390,000 is to replace expired and outdated hardware. Hardware failures that they experienced in the past are due to expired or outdated hardware. They are also taking steps to firm up their backup capabilities with redundant configurations, in addition to traditional tape backups. With redundancy, there are automatic failover capabilities that the system will activate immediately when certain conditions are detected. With these funds, they plan to procure 5 new EqualLogic SAN storage units to replace their existing EMC CX-3 and CX-4 SAN storage units, which are expired or outdated. They will also procure a new server for their new email system and a new uninterruptible power supply, UPS, power backup system for their servers located at the Guam Homeland Security. So I hope this addresses one of our previous speakers. I know he's reached out to the Office of Technology and he has concerns and about some of the data that we have seen in the past news that weren't properly backed up. But this is the reason why you see this in capital outlay, and I hope that with this funding source, they will allow them to start moving with some of the concerns that this body has with regards to backing up our data. Mr. Chair, I could go on with the list here if everybody would like, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. It's broken down. Some of this, again, like the AS400 and the many things were items that, again, were just moved over. I did line out one of the biggest items there that seemed new, but that was in capital outlay. And of course, they also mentioned in the that in their staffing that these positions that were vacant in 2014 are going to be filled. So we can also consider helping that. Folks, we all know this is a new organization, and if you can review some of the items here, these are a very heavy, as outlined here in their narrative, a mission or mandate that they have before them. We have to do whatever it takes to assist this agency. This is an office that I believe is key to transforming this government as far as things as our previous speaker has pushed a lot for online services and all that, but we all know it's a new office. We have to do what it takes to support them in their requests. They've heard our concerns. I think you can see that it's reflective in their budget and what they're trying to do as far as backing up data, advancing some of their technologies across the line and throughout the executive agencies, and ensure that they are properly staffed. But if anybody would like any more information on this, you can actually review exactly the narrative and go down it one by one and see exactly what it's for. They've done a very good job in providing in detail what they are going to do with regards to contractor services and capital outlay. So I know that was key yesterday to what the body was requesting, and I hope this clarifies their concerns. Thank you, Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Morrison. I hope this satisfies everybody's issues as it relates to the appropriation proposed for Office of Technology. That one's elsewhere, I believe. Senator Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm grateful for the breakdown of the information. This is very helpful. There are some things that kind of stand out, though, that confuse me a little bit that I would like to be clarified. For example, in the capital outlay, the $390,000, they state it is to replace expired and outdated hardware. Now, the first thing that jumps to my mind is this Office of Technology was created 1.5 years ago. So what expired or outdated hardware within that office are they replacing, or are they using this money to replace expired and outdated hardware in the Department of Administration? And if that's the case, then I think this capital outlay item should have been under the actual expenditures of the Department of Administration specifically, and not tucked away into the Office of Technology. Because what I would like to see and what I would like to track is how much are we actually investing in this Office of Technology with respect to its actual mission, and not subsidizing the mission of the Department of Administration.
In my discussions, we were in the office until after 6 o'clock last night with members of the Department of Administration and BBMR. And as I understand it, the Office of Technology took over the old data processing center with everything that was in it. And some of that equipment is probably older than some members of this legislature, since I know a former governor worked in that office 40 years ago. So I know some of that equipment is old. And I think on page 3, they make mention about the fact that they're going to be procuring the 5 new Ecologic SAN storage units to replace the EMX CX3 and CX4. And so that, I believe, is their answer to the question of capital outlay. And I'm hoping this is sufficient for everybody. Anybody else? If
I saw that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Hello? I like to, of course, echo the same thing as the previous speaker, because as I was reading, a lot of this breakdown for their contractual, and I just can't help but wonder, of course, because they did not separate out completely. Like, for example, I know the generator maintenance is not just for the center, that it actually, yes, support. It says they support the emergency of the data center, but it means it's all of DOA.
I don't believe that can be possible. They're downtown.
Where are they downtown?
They're still here.
They said they had moved out, and that they had all that part of the furniture stored outside because they were moving. They're in transition to move out.
No, the data center is still over here, across the street by the police department.
Yeah, that office.
Yeah, no, the rest of administration is at ITC, but the rest of them are here.
The data center itself is down there in that building.
Their power bill is high, and their generator is necessary because they have all the computers that need to be kept cool. That's why this building is a near refrigerator, because of our our server in the back, or at least my office is a refrigerator.
So you're saying that the AS400 is down there in this Agani building and not at the main DOA building?
As I understand it, they have a backup at Homeland Security. They have something down here because you have to have redundancy in the event that something should happen in one of the two places.
The other question as well is that it was in this legislature that we had appropriated monies for the Power 7 that was requested by DOA.
And that's probably
yeah.
that's probably in the DOA one, separate from theirs, from this one. This is the Office of Technology. I believe we've been trying to separate the two.
Separate, meaning which two? The
Office
AS
of Technology.
Yes, yes.
And-
No, but I mean, but the power system itself, because they said the hardware is what they have, and they're also
For the Treasurer's Office and for that fiscal division up there.
and for Rev and Tax as well, so that they'll all be
Yes.
able to communicate. So that system is where?
That's at Rev and Tax and at DOA, at ITC.
And not at the Office of Technology.
The backup, hopefully, will be at Office of Technology or at Homeland Security in a secure place. Senator Snickles?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are some items in here that I'm very pleased about. I'm pleased about item 10, the email maintenance and support. As it states, this item was not funded in 2014, and it will supplant the email exchange server. So hopefully this will prevent the loss of any kind of emails, as well as the item number 13, this Nomura Footprints is able to track the service requests from other agencies. I think those two items there specifically jump out at me as actually being aligned with what I was anticipating was the vision of the Office of Technology, which was to create a centralized unit to begin reaching out to all of the agencies and providing them with the support. A lot of these other items, maybe with the exception of, well, a lot of these other items look to me like they're just reinvestments in the core function of the data processing unit. And so, and my point is, Mr. Chairman, is I support investing in the Office of Technology. I'm just a little concerned that that investment gets lost in the bigger picture of having to support pre-existing functions. $2.9 million to the Office of Technology sounds like a ton of money, but a fraction of that's actually going to advance the mission of the Office of Technology as we all envisioned it to be. So maybe for future budgets, we can kind of carve out what's being invested in furthering the Office of Technology mission versus what's being spent to support pre-existing functions of the data processing unit, because without that delineation, where it becomes difficult for us to fully grasp how much we're investing in the Office of Technology versus how much we're spending just to continue to support the existing systems that run the government.
I think many senators, including the late Senator Ben, attempted to try to assist the author or the godfather of the Office of Technology understand that we really should have separated it. I believe that after this last week, that his legislation to completely separate Office of Technology will be forthcoming. And we'll make a complete separation. But this was a learning experience for all of us. Many of us pointed it out, and it wasn't done at that time, but now I think he realizes that it is necessary to make it completely independent. And hopefully at some point we can get Department of Administration and Rev and Tax to start talking to each other in their computers. That's my biggest frustration. But do I take that as we've now satisfied with?
Well, you know, I think so. But can we just at least, and I want to put this on record, is that that they be a little bit more cooperative with the legislature when we request for information like this, because it makes it very difficult, and I'm sure you can see why a lot of questions, because
Yes.
they've just not been responding.
I understand, and I
Thank
want
you.
to thank Senator Yamashita and the other senators who sent the emails and texts to get everybody down there, because I assure you, Benita came, Tony came, and Joey came to the office, and we were there until after 6 o'clock last night discussing this. So they understand that, and I will impress upon them, Senator St. Nicholas, that, and Senator Morrison also reminded them that they have outstanding response letters to you, okay? And we will assist in getting those answers. Thank you. Subsection 9, Office of Technology. Any further? H, Department of Revenue and Taxation. $11,746,849, of which $9,052,847 will come from the general fund and $2 million from the Better Service Fund. And for revenue and taxation, there was in 2014 they received $10,638,000. The governor had asked for 12.5. The committee recommended 11,746, but I believe the difference of 745 is going to be taken care of in the pool. Is that the understanding everybody has? All right. So, revenue and taxation. Anybody? Bureau of Statistics and Plans, $1,204,622. We gave them exactly the amount that the governor had asked for, which is an increase of a few thousand over what they got last year. Anybody? Department of Public Works. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Anybody? Guam Contractors License Board. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Tony Atta,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
as opposed to Senator Tom Atta, who said no objection.
Yeah, it was just the on line, I believe it's line 1, and it shall be allocated from the general fund. And that's under Public Works. Shall be allocated from the general fund appropriation in subsection J1 to the Department of Public Works. Just a technical correction.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll note that, please. Otherwise, thank you, Eagle Eye. Guam Contractors License Board. Senator St. Nicholas.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of inquiry. I was considering including it in a miscellaneous provision, but I just wanted to clarify, having recollected that it was in previous chapters here on the concerning the public works, a carryover provision for their appropriation. Would that be appropriate more in a miscellaneous provision or within the Department of Public Works chapter?
We can do it here if you just want to make that amendment.
I would, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection to allowing Public Works to carry over?
The reason, the justification, Mr. Chairman, is busing maintenance, school bus maintenance and procurement. Sometimes they have large parts that they need to purchase, and it's better for them to wait until after the lapse of the fiscal year to say, oh, we have this extra $300,000 to go and buy this large item. So instead of having funding taken out of public works and used for other purposes, for the sake of school bus maintenance, I would like for them to be able to carry over the funding.
Okay. Anybody else on the suggestion that this department be allowed their carryover for that specific purpose?
Can I?
Senator Respicio, then Speaker Wonka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sure. Can I just ask OFB what implications that has on the budget if we start allowing all these carryovers? I understand the answer, but I just wanted to have this discussion on the record.
Senator Speaker, to answer the question, with carryover appropriations, the effect on the budget is essentially they're allowed to spend their existing appropriations in FY14 in FY15. Anything that's unexpended and unencumbered.
No, I
they'll-
understand what
yeah.
it does. I
Yeah.
understand what a carryover provision
Yes, sir.
does. But how does that impact the budget if say for example, the revenue projections aren't met, or there was a deficit that particular fiscal year? Because if it's okay for this case, Mr. Chairman, then I think we should do a carryover provision for all the departments and agencies. I understand the implications, so do we want to go down this road? To start piecemealing and saying, and there's a reason why they don't allow for prior year authorizations unless it's specifically authorized by the legislature, because it's purely a budgeting tool. So you keep carrying these carry forwards on the books, and
I believe it has a cash flow implications for FY15. I guess it depends on what the body authorizes for each agency, but I assume that if all agencies are authorized carryover or continuing appropriations, then that would have some cash implications on FY15.
and if it's true that there is a $2 million deficit in the current or the last fiscal year, then that money would have to be made up again, right? If there was a deficit in this upcoming budget for some reason.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
That having been placed on the record, is there still, was that an objection to it, or just you? No. Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. My question, of course, was, I'm sorry, in the previous, and maybe this is more a budget term that's being used, because I know that the discussion was that for public works, that we did appropriate a certain amount of money from two different funding sources, but then within, of course, that place, it's broken down for, like, for example, that the previous speaker had said that rather than allocated, that it's appropriated, but in the language in the next page, it's the same thing. And I've been checking throughout that allocated from the appropriations. So I'm not sure what the language was that you accepted to change on page 58, line 1. Yeah, from the appropriation. So that means it was appropriated.
We put general fund on the before appropriation.
To put down from the general fund?
Yeah, from
that-
the general fund appropriation
Okay.
in subsection J.
Yeah, okay, so say specifically, okay,
Yeah.
because then I know on the other page, it says the same thing.
Yeah,
allocated.
as opposed to the Guam Highway
Okay,
Fund.
thank you.
Okay? Is everybody satisfied with Public Works? And we'll include your provision, Senator Snickles, specific to the bus operation. All right? All right, we're at Guam Contractors Association. Go ahead. Senator Tommy Morrison.
Mr. Chair, I like the fact that the way this budget is designed. I remember working closely with the oversight chair and in addressing the Guam Building Code Council on how that he was trying to look at ways, mechanism to fund it out of the contractors licensing board. And I also appreciate knowing that the levels of funding here are pretty much in line of what they've consistently generating up to that amount. And of course, in previous budgets, I know they've worked with actually even less, even minus the 135, which will still give the contractors licensing board $775,000. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they're pursuing more investigators and giving the impending military buildup. We're seeing more contractors coming online, renewing their license, new license being registered, and it's my understanding there has been a spike in registered contractors. So if I can get a little clarification, if there's investigators that are being potentially looked to hire for this fiscal year.
Just a second. Why don't you put that?
Just to answer the question regarding the Guam Building Code Council, according to their budget, there's one investigator that they're recruiting, I think, currently. Yes, within. Yeah, none for the Guam Building. Yeah, this is for CLB specifically. Yeah. Is it one? Yeah, just one. There's 3 total in the budget request. So there's 2 existing and 1 additional under recruitment. Yeah. 3 total. 2 existing and then 1 recruiting. 1 in recruitment. Yes. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Well, I look forward maybe working with yourself and the oversight chair maybe in the future and the contractors licensing board to see what their plans are going forward. This is a pending build-up because when there's a spike in contractors out there registering, it should correspond with more investigators out there, ensuring that contractors are complying with the rules, and of course protecting our consumers out there as well. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Senator Morrison. Just for the information of the body, this appropriation is exactly what the governor had requested. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Maybe in line of the questioning from our colleague here is that, as more licenses, of course, are being secured, that, of course, more monies would come in. And similar to what we did with another fund is that maybe midterm, depending on, like you say, the spike of more licenses being given and more work to be done, that at that time there could be the request for the additional funds that they have. But I'm also wondering is that in the different object categories, and I know we're very strict in terms of monies actually from other categories moving up into personnel, whether that is something to consider, that, there could be that possible, monies moving between object categories should there be a need. I'm not saying that there will be, but there are definitely 2 different options to consider. Thank you.
I think we can address that, and I will be open to your discussions with the chair of oversight chair about seeing to it that if they get additional money that they have the authorization to hire. All right, but this was what the governor had requested. On the licensing board, On appeals. Okay. There was an increase, but it's exactly as was requested by the front office. The Guam Police Department. The Guam Police Department received exactly what the was requested by the governor. 29,401,772 was in 2014. The governor requested 34,737,780. The substitute bill provides 34,737,780, exactly what the governor requests, which is a $5,336,008 increase. All right.
Just on page,
Pardon? No, Senator Ada and then Senator Uggan.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a technical on page 62, line 4. And of general funds appropriated in subsection M2, that should be M1.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
We'll have to change your name to Eagle Eye.
No, not at all.
I'm afraid. You read it too often. Senator Uggan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just in light of the revenue adjustment upward for the Guam Police Department, I just want to highlight that not only will this provide or should this provide an opportunity to be able to go out and recruit additional uniformed police officers, but also address their overtime requirement for fiscal year 15. Because we know that during the course of a recent roundtable discussion or oversight hearing, there were concerns about $900,000 being incorporated into the budget for overtime, when in actuality, the expenditure rate was about $2.3 million for the entire fiscal year in terms of their spending habits in the past. So I just want to recognize that, Mr. Chairman, because obviously this is an assurance to the community of Guam and to the uniformed police officers that their overtime should not be an issue in fiscal year 15, and that their GPD's ability to go out and recruit additional uniformed police officers and put them out on the streets to protect our community is and should be reflected in the increased budget provided to the Guam Police Department. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else on Guam Police Department? Department of Corrections. Again, in line with our joint priority of public safety, this appropriation is exactly as was requested by the administration.
Mr. Chair, once again,
The increase was it was $21,305,788 in 2014. In 2015, the governor requested $25,953,398. This budget bill provides $25,953,358, which is exactly what requested by the administration, which is an increase of $4,647,620. All right. Senator Tony Atta.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, once again, just on page 64, line 7, general funds appropriated in subsection N1, not N2.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're embarrassing me.
Not at all, Mr. Chairman. 4 ayes are always better than 2.
And I only have one, so.
Well, then 3 ayes.
So, Senator McCready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm not going to make any amendments to add a new prison, but I think it would look much better in this budget. I just want to make sure that we address these problems. I know it's not in here, and like I said, I'm not going to make that amendment, but I think we need to focus on building a new infrastructure for our guards and their families to keep them safe. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing this process and allowing me to speak on it. But it's been my position for the last year and 3 months that we need to address these problems. And I think, you know, when you look at this budget, it still addresses the problem that we face today. But when we look 20 years and 30 years from now, we don't address that problem. I think we need to do that as soon as possible from this legislature. So thank you very much. No
Thank
amendments.
you very much, Senator McGreedy. The correction that Senator Tony Atta to and any other, go ahead, please, Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I recognize that this was an increase from this year's budget, right? Just wanted to find out if in the digest, if there was a separate line item that the administration had provided for inmates who are taken to the hospital for care. Is that something that's a separate line item?
Do you see medical? In the digest, unfortunately, they have prior year obligation, Guam Memorial Hospital. They have 0.
Okay, you know, I recognize and I commend them because they have actually brought down what DOC owes the hospital. They've brought that down. However, I think moving forward, they have to recognize that this is something, a line item that must be budgeted for moving forward. And so I'm not ready to make any amendments now, but I think it's something that must be put on record that must be done moving forward for them.
Thank you very much. And I agree that there it is. There's about 320,000 in their revolving fund, which might. Yeah, I think we'll just have to remind them that they have to keep their payment to GMH current. Okay. Thank you. As it relates to the overall budget for Department of Corrections, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, maybe in your digest as well, could you share if there is a request to hire medical professionals at DOC? Because we know they've lost their psychologists and psychiatrists, and if we've been informed that there are individuals there, of course, in need of these services, but we're unable to provide them. And the process also in terms of hiring has just been too long, and I'm wondering whether that's included in their overall budget.
Yes, ma'am.
specifically are they including as a?
Contractual services for medical, dental services, pharmacy services, 630,299. No, they've provided for, and they've assured me that their nurses are just about hired, or at least that was the last hearing that we had. Okay? And hopefully having a full forensic staff up there will cut down their having to run up to emergency room. Okay? Department of Corrections? Department of Agriculture. Mr. Chairman, there's a technical amendment. First, we'll start with Senator Toniata, who's a...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, on page 65 again, on line 4, that should read 3514443. It's 3541. Just a technical.
It's my one eye, it's dyslexic on top of
Not a
everything
problem,
else.
Mr. Chairman. And then again on line 6, it should read $3,424,312, and not the $2,999,312.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We're Department of Agriculture. Okay. I guess, is there an amendment? All right, Senator Rodriguez, you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this is, before I proceed, I'd like to add Senator McCready and Senator Respicio as a co-sponsor of this amendment. What this amendment does is on line 22, amends the protection, subitem 3, protection of Guam's natural resources. What it basically does, Mr. Chair, is now they have 3 limited term Conservation 1 officers that they brought in a few months ago. And these 3 officers now are being funded through a grant that is expiring on the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th. And so what we want to do here is ensure that that these 3 officers are funded beyond the grant period of September 30th, 2014. And so this provision here, which provides for the sum of $425,000, makes it a mandate that these funds also be used to ensure that these 3 are preserved in their positions.
Senator Duenas and Senator Munya Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And even though the mover of the amendment didn't add me as a co-sponsor, there's still time. but
you can add yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add myself. No, Mr. Thank you for your gracious. You know, I really appreciate this amendment, and I wanted to just put on the record that with the hard work of the chairman and others in terms of our efforts to move forward on the invasive species, council's ability to implement the fee schedule is very close to implementation, and the issue here would be sustainability. You know, the good majority leader and I had the pleasure of Department of Youth Affairs working there and AmeriCorps coming through, and a lot of these opportunities are like training programs for those who get into the field, and sometimes when you have LTAs or other folks that come through, they find a passion for this work, and they end up qualifying in the future for these positions, and they bring a great deal of value to our island in terms of conservation and those efforts. So I just wanted to speak to the sustainability of this type of arrangement, and it's one thing also, it's an added bonus to future federal grant opportunities to show that we maintain and sustain critical areas under which we were funded through federal programs. So this is an excellent amendment and something that is truly sustainable and you know, designed to protect our island. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of this amendment.
Thank you very much, Senator Dueñas. Senator Winnie-Barnes?
Sijulis Masi, Mr. Chair, I too just want to share my support for this amendment. I did have an amendment that I was going to proffer on the floor and work it in on the allocation for the public safety recruitment and include the conservation officers for the Department of Agriculture and for the conservation officers. But as I see the amounts provided here on Section 3, I think that that's inclusive, and we verified that yesterday. So I just want to say thank you to the author of this amendment, and I will support it. Senator Moss.
Thank you. Any other senator? Mr. Chairman, then Senator McCready, then Senator Uggan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I want to, for the record, thank Senator Rodriguez for moving this amendment forward. Although I have oversight over the Department of Agriculture, I want to state for the record, Mr. Chair, that when these three conservation officers brought to my attention that their term is going to expire at the end of the fiscal year because their grant's going to expire, they passionately told me, Mr. Chairman, and others that their director was fighting to try to extend their positions beyond the expiration of September 30th of this year. And I want to state for the record that the director has never, ever made any communications with the legislature, particularly with my office, regarding the need to extend these positions. And so I want to publicly express my continued disappointment in that director, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, that she says one thing and yet there's no evidence of her wanting to have the full complement to make sure that our natural resources are protected. We're discussing the Department of Agriculture's budget, and this would be a most opportune time to bring up that the Attorney General, through the request of Speaker Wampat, has issued an opinion saying that the animal control officers are entitled to the law enforcement pay, but yet again, that department, that director, has not made any request to this legislature on how we're going to resolve and rectify that situation. And so far, this budget doesn't contain any provisions other than what you've budgeted for the department. And so Senator Barnes has just asked me, how about the animal control officers, and how about that they're entitled to the law enforcement pay as well, as per the Attorney General's opinion. And so we have this amendment that would extend these three positions, and I certainly support it. We also have the lingering issue of what to do with the other positions that are entitled to the law enforcement pay that department is not recognized. We also have the ongoing issue of the inspection of the proposed animal quarantine facility, which the director and the territorial vet said that they conducted the inspection, Mr. Chair and colleagues, but they didn't conduct the full inspection using the checklist. And so we continue to see disparities with what is said versus what is done. And I want to again thank the mover of this amendment, and I want to express my support for these employees remaining beyond the September 30th deadline. And I guess to also tell them that in all their desires to want to resolve this issue, I kept asking them, have your director go on the record and ask by way of a letter to yourself as appropriations chair and to the speaker and members of the legislature. But Mr. Chair, they haven't done that. And so although she hasn't done that, we do have the responsibility as a legislature to try to resolve that. But I'm a firm believer in the separation of powers. I'm a firm believer in the budget process that the governor proposes, the legislature disposes, and this amendment is outside of the budget process, but I think it's justified because these positions are certainly necessary. And so I want to thank the mover of the amendment and also for having me to be a co-sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator McCready, then Senator Duggan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to thank the mover of the amendment and for adding me as a co-sponsor. I also like to thank the co-sponsors and Senator Yamashita. You know, this is part of the collaboration that we had in those hours of meetings that we bipartisanly came to an agreement on the budget. This was one of them, and I thank the forward thinking and the appropriation here. And this is a compromise. This is, I think, a common sense compromise that we need to make sure that our natural resources are being watched and guarded and protected. And for that, and the 3 conservation officers that we stand to lose at the end of the fiscal year because of funding, we identified a funding source, and we made sure that those conservation officers will be working. You know, we have conservation officers right now with 30, 35, and 25 years in service, and that agency keeps dwindling in their numbers through attrition. And so I think moving forward, we need legislation such as this, but we also need to take a look at what other things they need in their budget. And I think we need to identify and mandate that we take care of the conservation department in our Department of Agriculture and make sure that they are not underfunded. And I hope we can do that as the year passes, and you know, in the next legislature budget session, if I'm lucky enough to be here, I will again advocate for these conservation officers and make sure our natural resources continue to be protected. But I would like to thank all the sponsors and especially Senator Yamashita as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Duggan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. I too would like to chime in and first of all thank the individuals who are occupying these particular positions, because obviously over the course of the last 3 years they've been serving our community in this capacity, albeit through federally funded sources. Now there's this eventual transition into the upcoming fiscal year of transitioning them into local funds, and I want to also recognize the federal government for supporting this community through funding these 3 key positions. Mr. Chair, if I can get your guidance in regards to this, because I support the amendment. It's just that as we read it, this would apply to the salary and benefits of the 3 competitive limited term appointment conservation officer 1 positions, which expires. So it highlights exactly what the positions are. What I'd like to request your guidance, Mr. Chair, if in fact, because these individuals have already occupied these positions for the last 3 years, how, if not, how these individuals can be classified into this particular position. Because I think that we owe it to them, having served and having received the necessary training, having received the necessary experience in terms of serving our community in this particular capacity. I would hate to see them arbitrarily set aside for doing any particular recruitment and transitioning them into classified positions. So I don't know if there's any way legislatively to allow for that. If not, I would like to yield to the oversight chair and ask him to please continue to push, not for the official recruitment, into the local funding of this particular position, and then hopefully with the experience, with the training, with the expertise of these 3 occupants in these positions, that they would immediately transition into the position on a permanent basis, classified basis. So that's my concern, Mr. Chair. So if there's any guidance you can extend from your seat in terms of how that can be accomplished, I think these individuals will no longer be left in abeyance in terms of trying to figure out whether in fact they will have a job the subsequent year because of the funding. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you yield, Chairman Respicio?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe, and I appreciate the comments of Senator Argan and the retiring speaker. I believe Senator Barnes has an amendment to include the Department of Agriculture for conservation officers in the public safety vacancy pool. And so if Senator Barnes moves her amendment and passes, what I imagine would happen is that these positions would open up, then these 3 individuals would have to competitively compete for these full-time positions, and then hopefully they would qualify and they would be able to transition into a permanent position. But what this amendment does as it is, it just provides funding for another year. They would still be an LTA, but Senator Barnes will offer a remedy to hopefully transition them into a permanent classified position pursuant to the merit process.
Thank you very much. Senator Uggan, is that
Thank you, Mr.
satisfactory?
Chair, and to the Oversight Chair, thank you for providing that feedback. And in terms of recruiting for the position, I don't think that that's an issue. My concern, at least looking at these 3 individuals who have invested time, training, and service to the community in these particular positions, how they can transition into retaining their jobs and have that job security in a classified capacity. You and I know, Mr. Chairman, that there are ways to work that legally within the structure, and I certainly hope the Oversight Chair would continue to monitor this, and hopefully these 3 individuals would not have spent their time in these positions serving our island and our community to no avail by virtue of being dismissed through the recruitment process, because I would think that they already have that necessary level of expertise to automatically be selected to be retained in these positions. So I just wanted to reemphasize that, because obviously these individuals have been somewhat in a quandary trying to figure out if in fact they're going to transition to local funds and how that process is going to proceed. So I just wanted to share that concern. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the Chair of
Thank
the
you,
Oversight.
and I agree. If the classified system, the merit system works as it's supposed to, it would, one would assume they would be the top of the list. And I'm sure there are 13 other eyes in here that are going to be watching to see that that happens. And so thank you very much for your, stating your concern to the record. And I'm hopeful that the powers that be heard the comment. On the Rodriguez amendment, it's actually, my eagle eye is out of the room. It's line 2 to 4, page 66. And on the amendment, with that correction, line 2 to 4, yeah, I think the clerk says it should be on page 66, line 2 to 4, on the second page. Okay? On the Rodriguez amendment. On the Department of Agriculture with the Rodriguez amendment. Anybody have any further comment? Thank you. Guam Public Library System. Department of Youth Affairs, again in line with our commitment to public safety. In 2014, DYA received $4,819,756. The governor requested in his executive budget $6,121,557. The budget as that's before you has an appropriation of $6,121,557, exactly what the governor had requested, which is a $1,301,801 increase. Mr. Director, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that, keeping that appropriation level at the same as requested. You know, we all often look at Department of Youth Affairs, and we don't realize that, you know, we always want to help our children, our youth offenders, to prevent them from becoming adult criminals. And the budget that is given to them, though, you know, everything is, you know, always not enough, but every little bit helps. When I was there, we were able to, with your oversight and your care and compassion, we were able to get nursing services that hasn't been there for a while. And it just goes to show that when we all work together and we collaborate together, that these things can happen and good things can come out to these agencies. So, Mr. Chairman, once again, thank you for your oversight and your leadership on that there.
Oh, two directors in a row.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have to join my my good colleague, the minority leader, in thanking you, Mr. Chairman, for maintaining this level of appropriation. I think even our other colleague, who is the director of Department of Youth Affairs, I don't think even himself has ever seen this level of appropriation for Department of Youth Affairs from the general fund. So this is sorely needed, and I know that it will advance the mission of Department of Youth Affairs. So I thank you for this body's commitment, and most especially your commitment. Mr. Chairman, you joined me a number of times during this session for visitations to Department of Youth Affairs. And so with this in mind, there should be no question now in terms of recruitment on youth service workers to be able to manage the population, and also to manage in the resource centers, Mr. Chairman, to be able to hopefully prevent our youth from reoffending or even offending in the first place. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for your service at DYA and the leadership that you provided when you were there. Anybody else wish to speak on DYA? Any amendments? There being none. Guam Environmental Protection Agency. In the previous fiscal year, the appropriation was $984,534. The governor requested $1,046,553. The committee bill before you has a $100,000 increase to $1,146,553. And the $100,000 is related to a project of our colleague from AFME or Sinahanya. Senator Ogden?
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, just looking at on page 70, line number 22, it says the sum of $200,000 from fiscal year 2016 general fund revenues may be subject to appropriation by Legislature in Guam. Is that 2016? Should that continue to read 2016 or 2015?
His bill asked for $300,000. Unless he objects today, we've split it between 2 fiscal years.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I had to step out for a moment. Can I get a recap of the discussion?
No, the appropriation on the bottom of page 70 has $100,000 in 2014 and in 2015, and a potential 200 in the next fiscal year, if that's...
Mr. Chairman, I think this was an excellent way to do this. In my communications with at least 2 dealers, they said that they believe they'll easily reach the capacity within this first fiscal year, and so it's I'm thankful the way this was done, because I was even very flexible on the first bill as passed, and so this will prove that if it's sustainable, they'll exhaust 100,000, and then we'll double that going forward. So. For the purchase of fully electric vehicles. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your vision, and also thank you for being cognizant of the budget, but also supporting this program. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank the body.
You. Anybody else on Guam Environmental Protection Agency? Department of Labor. Department of Labor received $2,066,114 in this current fiscal year. The governor's proposal was to increase that to $2,955,733. The warm bodies that the committee appropriated for was $2,661,835, or a decrease of about $300,000, but that's being addressed in the pool. Senator Limtiaco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just an amendment to this section here, which looks to appropriate the sum of $113,520 shall be allocated from the general fund appropriation in subsection S1 for fiscal year 2015 to fund 2 positions for the Guam Registered Apprentice Program. And Mr. Chair, just to some background on this, this body had gone through some great lengths to fund additional funds or appropriate additional funds to GCC earlier in the year in support of the Guam Apprentice Program. And in this 2015 fiscal budget as well, we are appropriating money to support the Guam Registered Apprentice Program. Now that takes care of the educational aspect of the apprentice program. One of the issues that has been brought to our attention regarding Department of Labor is that Department of Labor needs to address how it supports the employers that participate in the Registered Apprentice Program. And by ensuring that the positions are funded with this amendment, that will ensure that the Department of Labor can support those employers that are making an investment in the workforce and the development of that workforce, so that the program can be a success. I would ask the body that if we find the level of importance to fund the educational portion of the apprentice program, we also need to ensure that those employers that are participating in it are supported as well when they submit their documents to Department of Labor, that for audit purposes, to make sure they're in compliance with it, that Department of Labor does have the staffing it needs in order to process it. Additionally, the Guam Registered Apprentice Program tax credits will expire in December 30th of this year. And so in the miscellaneous section, I plan on introducing a subsequent amendment that extends that. And if we can just go back to the discussions that we had regarding the minimum wage and a lot of the arguments that were made on the floor that centered around how shall we address the increase in minimum wage, and how shall we address whether or not there's added productivity from those employees without any sort of workforce development or training. And I would proffer that there wasn't. The earlier increase in minimum wage didn't have that aspect. And we need to ensure that we're developing our workforce in order to add productivity to the employers as a value add. And the Guam Registered Apprentice Program looks to do that. You can ask any contractor, and the Contractors Association was very vocal about it. Their employees don't make minimum wage, and it's largely a factor of Davis-Bacon Act, as well as the fact that many of these employers are participating in the apprentice program. And it's not just the contractors; it's several other technical positions that companies utilize to participate in. So I'd ask the body to consider it. We can't go into this budget funding the educational aspect without making sure that we support the operational, the employer aspect. And we can do that by making sure that that Department of Labor has those positions to adequately process and audit those that are participating in the program, and subsequently ask the body's support on extending the Guam Registered Apprentice Program tax credits to ensure that we are investing in our workforce and that the productivity matches the level of pay that these apprentices, when they graduate from the program, are receiving. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Newton? Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I was off. If you could just, as I had asked, check with Gita to check with bond counsel on the other provisions, so that when we get to miscellaneous provisions, that'll be addressed. And the 113,000 on this Limtiaco amendment. Any objection? On the rest of the Department of Labor, anybody have any other amendments they wish to make on Department of Labor? I'm sorry, before you leave, just so that it's clear, you're adding a sub-item 3 so that I appropriately put that in. Is that okay?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On the rest of the Department of Labor, any? Seeing none. Department of Parks and Recreation. Senator Morrison.
Mr. Chair, I just want to point out that we've been working closely on addressing how we can provide more flexibility with the Public Recreation Service Fund. And I know you have oversight of the recreation. And again, I want to point out historically way back, this fund through the Recreation Division was able to generate up to $1 million because they had a flexibility in turning around more recreation programs for our youth, or even adult programs, recreational out there. So I just want to put that on the record to work with yourself and how we can allow or incentivize this recreation fund so that it can get up to the levels it used to many years ago. There is some issues of how that fund is used, and I hope we can work with you to address that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Senator Tom Adda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 73, I just have a question about the reporting requirements, the quarterly reporting requirements that on line 21 and 22, the Director of DPR shall submit a quarterly report to the public auditor and the Speaker of Legislature in Guam. I'm just wondering why the OPA is involved in this, receiving this, whereas others, it's always to the Governor and the Speaker.
I apologize. That's continuing language. For some reason, I'm embarrassed. I don't.
So it should be to the Governor then, as opposed to OPA?
No, it is with the
let's do
OPA.
it. OPA.
This has been the
It's
language for,
continuing
yes, as the Tourist
As-
Attraction Fund Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
Please.
Chair. If I just may, this was boilerplate from past legislations and the commitment to use the tour.
You're not on.
It's on. And because of the appropriations coming from the Tourist Attraction Fund and the reporting requirements thereof, this was template that was put in for several legislatures. It is addressed to OPA.
It was designed to be addressed to OPA to keep track of the use of TAF money outside of the GVB.
Okay.
Any other questions? Senator Egan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. Just for purposes of transparency in terms of letting the people of Guam understand exactly what resources are going to these respective agencies. Mr. Speaker, there was a legislation that was enacted last year in August, of which additional resources are going to the Department of Education for sports activities, to the Mayor's Council for facility upgrades, and then also to Department of Parks and Recreation. So, Mr. Chairman, if by any chance, if not for this budget, if I can just bring it to your attention to ensure that in future budget discussions, that that's truly reflected in the budget, so that our people would understand that in this case, an additional $300,000, $400,000 conceivably would be going and directed to Parks and Recreation, so that in fact they can utilize it for sports development and the upgrade and the maintenance of some of the sports facilities. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to put that request, because I think for purposes of transparency, our people need to understand the resources that are going to their respective government and Guam agencies and how they have been prioritized and how they are being allocated. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
We're going to take just a very short recess. I understand that we may need to address something. All right? Senator Morrison? All right, thank you. We'll deal with that in the miscellaneous provisions then. Thank you very much. On the Department of Parks and Recreation, any amendments? Department of Land Management. Mr. Director. All right.
Yeah, in conversations with them, Mr. Chairman, this is adequate appropriation, so it
All right.
looks good.
Thank you. Senator Uggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question in terms of the authorized legal use for the Land Survey Revolving Fund. We know it's for surveying property, but is it also, does it extend to general operations of Department of Land Management? Because if it doesn't, then perhaps we need to prepare an amendment for the miscellaneous provision to authorize that. Because right now
It
you're
does.
you're providing approximately 95% of the budget originating from the Land Survey Revolving Fund. That's my only question.
It's, as I understand it, it always has been.
Always has been. Thank you.
Yes. On the Department of Land Management. Office of Chief Medical Examiner.
Mr. Chair, what was their budget from last?
$414,000.
So a slight increase on.
Very slight. Yes.
Mr. Chair, what portion of that budget accounts for the rental payments that are needed to reimburse GMH for the area that they occupy?
Let's see. In their digest, rental is zero.
Yeah, and I just want to state for the record that this is similar to what the chair of the committee, Senator Rodriguez, had pointed out regarding DOC's and other government agencies' obligations to GMH, and GMH's consistent testimony that there are expenses that are incurred on behalf of the government of Guam that from other agencies that they have to eat and is not reimbursed to them. And for the record, this is one of those issues in which it falls in, is that we constantly have GMH in on oversight hearings to address a lot of these issues, and just for the record, we have yet to address several of the deficiencies in each of these other agencies as it pertains to the operational expenditures of GMH. And like the chair of the committee had pointed out regarding DOC, there are some issues there, and I'm not sure if even the utility bills are included.
I apologize. I've just been informed that in contractual, there is an appropriation of $42,290, and of that, there is a MOU with the hospital for rental space.
And is that inclusive of utilities?
I would think so, because they have nothing in their budget for utilities.
Yeah.
And this is from the front office.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record.
All right. On the Office of Medical Examiner. Customs and Quarantine. Mr. Chairman? No? 14,266,288. 14 million.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. All right. Department of Chamorro Affairs. Senator Adda.
Mr. Chairman, just I believe it was 2 weeks ago, we had an information briefing to get an update on the status of the hot bond projects. And one of the questions that was asked by the chairman conducting the hearing was, what is the operational budget that will be needed by the museum? And at that time they said they didn't know, they didn't have any budget. And then now we find they have this 552. So I'm just curious, is this for the remaining 5 months or whatever of fiscal year 15 or what?
My apologies again on that one. When we had that roundtable hearing, I received a text from the president of the Department of Chamorro Affairs. There was a inclusion in the executive budget for them for a full year, but in as much as the museum is not going to be open the full year, the Office of Finance and Budget recommended a half-year budget, and in the event that they don't use it, it remains in the Guam Museum Fund for a continuing rollover. But we did provide to make sure that if it opens as they think that it's going to open next March or May in the second half, there's money in here, the $552,000.
So then I guess if they don't open until late into the year, what restriction exists so that they don't try to spend a supposed 12-month budget in the 3-month time frame? Or I mean, is that what it is? It's spend what you can with the remainder of the fiscal year, or
It
carries over. If it carries over, I understand that it carries over if they don't expend it, but there's no restriction from trying to just expend the entire $500,000 before the fiscal year is up.
I imagine that there will be no release from the TAF until the museum opens to make sure that they don't start doing anything with that 552. The 552 is coming from TAF.
And so who controls that disbursement?
Well, initially the allocation is from TAF, and then after it gets to DCA, then the president and the director of the museum will have responsibility for the expenditure.
Okay, fine, thanks.
Okay. Department of Chamorro Affairs. Department of Military Affairs. Mr. Chair? No? Anybody on Senator Uggan?
I know, Mr. Chairman, you have the figure 2,075,640 appropriated from the general fund to use as local matching for federal grants and aid, but then you don't include it as part of the general fund contribution? Because you do have the 865,650 and then your federal matching grants and aid. Are you referring to the 75% contribution? So the 2.2 million is the 75% federal funds contribution to many of these employees? Is that how I should read this?
I don't want to mislead anybody. The request from the governor's office was more than what is provided for here. I'll be upfront about it. It's about 60,000 difference. But as I understand, I've not received any word that there was any concern about this appropriation.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, for my
The matching is
purposes-
the same. It's 2075.
Yeah, just to understand the presentation, because traditionally in other sections you incorporate all the general fund contribution, and then you highlight what the matching requirement is. So here you have the general fund contribution 865.
Yes, you're correct that there's an error. That should read the 865 on line 7, and the words to 865,000 should be in line 6.
Okay, so we're going to make that adjustment?
Yes, no, I'm making that the amendment shall be made on line 6 to spell out 865,650.
Okay,
Yes.
so move.
Yes. And for information purpose only, the federal matching is $2 million.
Is it $2 million? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for pointing that out, Senator. On the Department of Military Affairs with that amendment. Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities. This is exactly as was recommended by the front office. 356. Any? Guam Fire Department. Again, the Guam Fire Department in 2014 received $29,591,165. The governor's request was $36,075,647. The committee is recommending $36,075,647, exactly as was recommended by the administration. Okay, on the Department of Fire, Guam Fire Department. Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation. It's an increase of no, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. It just funds the current employees.
Would that include the
There's one
adjustments,
vacancy.
Mr.
Pardon?
Chair? Would that include the adjustments for the employees there?
Yes.
Okay, so.
They all get the competitive wage. Everybody got competitive wage.
Okay, so that's why the increase. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Senator Addett, then Senator Uggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that, well, the sum of $293,000 is being appropriated to hire land surveyors. And the question that I have here is, for example, on line 23, they want to hire one registered surveyor. And then they want to hire one surveyor supervisor, which I presume will also have to be registered. And the question that I have is that I really doubt that they're going to be able to hire registered land surveyors. I think on the island we have something like probably 9 practicing land surveyors who are registered with appeals board, and those guys are tied up full time doing work out there. So instead of an authorization to, so I just don't see that they're going to be able to actually fill those positions. So maybe an alternative is to allow them to basically to contract out for land surveyor services.
Thank you very much. As I understand it, this was the request of the director. It was an authorization. I don't know if they're going to be able to fulfill it, but we'll have Senator Uggan and Senator Duenas. And then hopefully it'll answer your question. Well, I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Senator Uggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I had a similar concern about what restricting it to the hiring of personnel rather than providing that flexibility to the department, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, to be able to contract those services. So I think my concerns is very similar to the previous speaker in terms of what options are going to be readily available and how these resources are going to be applied. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Duenas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to draw our attention once again to the authorization to hire and under the LTA arrangement. As I understood it, from the Department of Land Management perspective, particularly from survey, this flexibility that they're asking for is actually part and parcel of managing the contractual and the RFP that would go out, similar to what Senator Tom Addett was discussing. So the idea behind registering land, because there's thousands and thousands of unregistered government property still, And that is something that, that Paul Santos is aggressively going out there to do. And also the issue with Chamorro Land Trust in and of itself, because we all know that that's where that bank of property goes to. But also in order to be able to create the subdivisions and follow even the subdivision law with current Chamorro Land Trust properties and leases that have been issued, it's extremely important that they go out and do this. So I think that I feel comfortable with this authorization simply because I understood the intent as mentioned by Mike Borja, now the director that was the former chairman of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, was to get this cadre of expertise under an LTA to manage what would overall be a contract to go out, and this would be the grouping that would be put together to do the quality control of the field work and under the contract as issued. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I certainly know that that was the intent. It was expressed to me on the record and off the record in my visits to Department of Land Management, and I remember that and recall it from the confirmation hearing of the current director, Mike Borja. So that's basically my input to what the intent of this language is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And as all of you know, the Committee on Appropriations is also the Committee on Land. And its discussions with the former chairman, now director of Department of Land Management, and the former director of Land Management, who is still there, this was their request. And this was their request, and so I'm hoping that this satisfies their need, but this was a discussion that we all had together. Senator Ada, is that satisfactory?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And I understand the need to hire this team so that they can, continue on with the requirements. But maybe then, as what I feel would be a more practical compromise is, fine, give them the authorization to hire a surveyor supervisor, a surveyor, an engineering technician, and land agents. But then when you start saying you're going to hire a registered surveyor, I mean, you narrow down the pool to 9 people, and so just remove then on line 23 the reference to a registered surveyor. Because you have a lot of people out there who actually know how to survey, but are not registered.
Okay, so the amendment is to strike registered in line 23. Any objection? Senator San Nicolas.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I'm just want to make sure that if the surveyor is not registered and they do a survey, I mean, what kind of ramifications would we have if that survey was, for whatever reason, improperly handled? I mean, I'm sure there's a reason why we have registered surveyors, and if that surveyor conducts a survey and we do all these subdivisions and we issue out property from the Chamorro Land Trust, and then it turns out that surveyor who was not registered, for some reason or another, didn't do their job properly. I mean, what is the difference between registered and unregistered, and why would we need to include that or not include that?
I understand what you're saying, and that was the reason why the committee, in collaboration with the former chair, now the director of land management, wrote this way. And I've been advised by the committee that not having a registered surveyor could impede the ability to be able to register.
Well, and I disagree with that, because I know, for example, I know of one registered surveyor who under him has several teams of surveyors, and the surveyor is not registered. But that registered surveyor has got the experience to actually take a look at the calculations that are done and can say, no, this is not, there's no closure or whatever. In this particular case with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, which is a subset within the Department of Land Management, you have the territorial surveyor, which I guess is Mr. Santos, who is a registered surveyor. So he would be the one to provide that quality assurance. If the body feels that they want to put that requirement in there for a registered surveyor, then fine. But at the end, I certainly would be, I would bet $1 to a donut that that position is going to remain vacant, because you're not going to get a registered surveyor who's worth his salt to fill that position. What we want is somebody who has the knowledge to be able to perform the survey, but because he is not registered. It's like the difference between a guy who's an engineer or an engineer with the suffix PE, who then has, taken a national exam and at least has demonstrated through that exam that he's competent.
Thank you. I'm sure that if the speaker was here, I'd be in trouble. We received a text from the Director of Land Management that they're speaking to a registered surveyor and that this is going to be able to move forward as, okay? Yeah. Okay, on Department of Land Management, Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Any other? Guam Regional Transit Authority. Senator Yamashita. Any amendments? Oh, Senator Nicholas and then Senator Argan. Or Senator Argan and then Senator Nicholas, deferring to seniority.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that the Guam Regional Transit Authority had acquired approximately $1 million for services that are to be rendered to be inclusive of veterans, tending to some of the veteran requirements. And that's one of the reasons why I have been in the loop in terms of trying to discuss that. My question is, because I'm anticipating some of those federal grants, matching grants in 8, would carry over into the next FY. Is there a reason why they have not highlighted that? Because I do know that they were expending some of the resources in June and July, but that was a little over $1 million in federal grants.
The budget was submitted and the digest was submitted in January. And we've not, there's been discussions and attempted discussions as late as 2 weeks ago, and the Minister of Regional Transit, who's a member of the legislature, has been attempting to try to get that resolved.
Okay, I just wanted to highlight that, Mr. Chairman,
no,
because there are
I
some
appreciate
federal
that.
grants that will carry over into the next FY, which will hopefully provide some additional services to our veterans as well as the general population. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I've been advised that procedurally I forgot something. On the add amendment to remove registered, that failed or was withdrawn. And on the Regional Transit Authority, there's no amendments that are being proposed by any member of the body. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Nicholas.
Just thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just for the record, I appreciate a lot of the work that's been going into trying to improve public transportation here on the island. There are major issues concerning the Guam Regional Transit Authority. We do have a board nomination that we're going to be confirming, or at least attempting to confirm in this session. I appreciate the appropriation. This again, for me, the way I view this is another carryover of what's been going on, but in no way is it an affirmation that the Guam Regional Transit System is in any way adequate at this time. A lot more work needs to go into proper planning to provision for a suitable mass transit system, and I just wanted to state that for the record, that this appropriation is just a continuation of existing services, but we are going to need to consider additional investments and the implementation of more refined plans and longer term commitments in order for us to make sure that public transportation, the needs not only for the general community but for all of our special need passengers as well as our veterans all need to be addressed in a more comprehensive and a much higher dollar investment commitment. But for now, this will suffice for us to go forward for the fiscal year. But the next fiscal year is also going to bring a lot more work to come up with something new and improved. And I look forward to working with Senator Yamashita as well as the administration to make sure that takes place. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Tamada.
I guess I just want to register on the record my dissatisfaction with the Regional Transit Authority. For the past, I think going on maybe well over 6 years, they've been going on a month-to-month contractual arrangement with a provider. And for some reason, they just haven't been able to get it together to put out an RFP so that at least whoever's the service provider, if he knows he's got 5 years, he can at least make an investment and then be able to, recoup his investment. Otherwise, on a month-to-month basis, it's kind of like, really it'd be, from a business standpoint, all he has to do is just put gas in the buses, and if they run for the next 30 days, that's fine. The second thing is, again, that agency has been without a general manager for just as long a period. And it isn't because they haven't had any applicants. It isn't because they haven't been able to interview people. For some reason, they put out a solicitation saying we have a position that's available. People apply, people get interviewed, and then nothing. So, we're going to spend another $3.6 million to maintain the status quo and do the same thing that we've been doing for the past 6 years, and we're never going to see an improvement to this transit authority. And the services that they provide is very important to this community. So I just had to get that off my chest and register that for the record, that I am very much dissatisfied with this particular agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Yamashita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. And so the multi-step bid process, which will address the absolutely agreed upon concerns raised by the previous speaker, is actually being addressed right now and is being ready to get kicked out. The Guam, the General Services Administration and the Attorney General is fine-tuning the multi-step bid. It'll start with a request of interest, which will have all the vendors at the table. So we will stop going month to month to month, because it is correct. We're wasting money that way. But the courts had finally decided it took 9 months. It took 9 years to resolve the protest. It took 9 years to resolve the protest. So the biggest lesson here, I think, learned was to ensure that we do it the right way so that we don't end up in protest land again. And I think this actual configuration of procurement is going to help us as we bring the vendors to the table first to massage the bid and then to kick it out, and we go step by step. So that's happening. The ARA-funded buses, that bid is also getting ready to get kicked out, and we should land maybe 10 buses in the next year. I absolutely agree with the general manager position, and one of the issues had been the requirement of a bachelor's degree, and so that is being discussed over and over again. But I agree. The makeup of the 4 people who make up this agency is being addressed. We do know that they have moved out of the Manuel F. L. Guerrero building into the DPW compound, essentially because that whole building is unhealthy. And so for now that has been renovated, is accessible, and they're working out of there. The plan that the oversight chair raised, the incentivized plan, that is, we're getting guidance there with the Small Business Administration at University of Guam, so that we actually do partner with our businesses. It's a very exciting, it is an opportunity. There are many businesses that have stepped forward and said that they are on board. They look forward to this working. I do not believe there's any doubt that anybody agrees that transit and transportation needs to be in place for our people, all of us. We have over 100,000 cars on our short island. The price of gas bounces from $4.90 to near $5 a gallon. And there are just many people who don't have access to get to the hospital, to the clinic, the banks, the beaches, or the stores, or to entertainment as they would wish. And so, again, I know I'm singing to the choir, but I wanted to update in a nutshell. The progress is moving forward. It isn't as quickly as we had hoped, but it is moving. But a lot of that is the multi-step bid process. It is getting ready to get kicked out. The GSA folks between Claudia Ekfaji and Robert Kono have been at the table consistently. Right now, the AG assistant is Carl Spalding, and so they have really been helping the current management understand what and how. But I do agree, it's been too slow. I do agree that the benchmarks have to be focused upon and move forward. And I understand at next week's board meeting, which is Wednesday, the 27th, which is held now at Mayor Rivera's office, who is now the current chair of the Transit Authority, there will be some decisions being made at that board meeting. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on the Guam Transit Authority? Oh, Senator Limpiaco? No? Any objection? Guam Election Commission, $1,382,872. That's exactly as was requested by the agency. It's in there. Any? No objection? Oof. Guam Solid Waste Authority. That's exactly as was requested by the administration. Senator Etta.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just, can you clarify if this amount of 7.4 million, how much of an increase is that from the previous year?
Last year they received, no, it's actually, it's a decrease of 227 from last year.
It's a decrease?
Yes, as per the governor's request. Last year they received 7,659,090. The governor requested 7,431,386, and the committee has reported out to all of you 7,431,386, exactly as was recommended.
I'm just wondering, because I know that I think it was back around the December timeframe, the receiver was saying that the debt service on the bond will be going up this year, I believe. And that the increase in that debt service was going to be addressed either one of two ways. Either the tipping fees for each customer was going to have to be increased, and the government was going to have to go in and request from PUC for an increase in the tipping fees, or the government is going to have to up its subsidy. So by virtue of the fact that then the government has, that the governor has in fact reduced the amount that is going to be paid from the government side, leaves then that somewhere somebody is going to have to go to the Public Utilities Commission to request to increase the tipping fee rates. So I'm kind of a little puzzled here as to how we're going to meet that requirement.
The proposed increase has been at the PUC for 2 years now. There has been no further action by the administration to move that forward.
Do we know when?
Go ahead.
Do we know when this debt service is going to will increase the amount?
It has already. We are subsidizing the debt service in Section 30 with our Section 30 funds because we're not raising enough money from the solid waste.
Correct. That's right. And so then it's not coming out from the general fund. Instead, it's coming out from the Section 30 money.
It was guaranteed by Section 30.
I understand. So that's just, so then, I mean, wherever it's going to come from, so then the government is subsidizing it.
Yes,
then.
it has been.
Okay. All right. So at least it's, the bottom line is the debt service is being covered, and that the tipping fees are not going to be increased.
Not yet, unless, I believe the receiver has notified the administration that it is the administration's responsibility to go before the PUC to ask for the increase, because they are responsible for the payment.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay.
And,
all right. Thank you.
Okay, on the Guam Solid Waste Authority. One last chance before we get through Chapter 5. We're at the very end. Chapter 5 up to double F has been addressed. Legislative branch.
Mr. Chair, if you can kindly just go over the year-over-year budget changes, if any, and specifically where that money is appropriated for specifically.
Last year, the legislature received 7.466635. The administration recommended an increase to 7607482. The committee has before the body a recommended 770562, which is a 163 increase over what the administration has proposed. And as I understand it, this percentage increase is equal to the executive office increase year over year, 4.35.
And Mr. Chair, the changes in the OFB budget?
No change from last year. We actually went down from what the governor had recommended. It's in 2014 it was 348.63. The governor generously recommended 348.218, but the committee has recommended to this body to stay at the 2014 level of 340.863.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Legislature. Chapter 7, Legal Services, Office of the Attorney General.
Mr. Chair, what was their...
Okay, I'll just get this out first. In 2014, the Office of Attorney General received $11,975,614. The governor's executive budget recommended an increase to $12 million. I don't deal in millions, so I don't. $12,466,121. The committee is recommending an even greater increase to $14,967,734, which is a increase of $2.5 million over what the governor has recommended. The governor's recommendation was actually $3 million over the previous year, and the combined is about a $5 million increase. No, $4 million, yeah. $3,992,120 increase, or 24.99 increase. Any senator wish to speak on the Office of Attorney General? Legal Services, the Public Defender Service Corporation. I understand, Senator Uggan, you have a amendment. You're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment that, if you recall, the Public Defender Service Corporation had written to not only the Speaker but also members of this body over the course of the past few months in terms of advocating for the authorization to be able to implement the Competitive Wage Act. And we did address the authorization necessary for the judiciary because at that time they wanted clarification, but unfortunately it was not brought to my attention in time to be able to address the Public Defender Service Corporation. So what I would like to propose, Mr. Chairman, is a new section 4 that would read as proposed in the amendment, notwithstanding any other provision of law, compensation for employees of the Public Defender Service Corporation shall be in accordance with the compensation plan set forth in the Government of Guam Competitive Wage Act of 2014, transmitted to Ilisa Tunguahan on January 15, 2014, subject to appropriations from Ilisa Tunguahan. And what you have provided here, Mr. Chairman, is sufficient funding to address the competitive wage requirement. They just need that official authorization.
Yes,
So-
we did provide the warring bodies their competitive wage.
That's correct.
We didn't realize they didn't feel they had the authority. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Any
Chairman.
objection to the Uggan amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Also, for the information of the body, that the investigators were not provided for their law enforcement, so we did provide a retroactive payment in this section. Okay? Try to provide equity. On the entire Chapter 7, with the Uggan Amendment being a new Section 4, Mayor's Council. In the 2014 budget, it is considerably, it's higher. They had asked, they had received $12,035,121, but that included the lump sum payment at the end of the term. You remember there was an election. The governor recommended a $9,581,426 appropriation to the Mayor's Council. In light of the competitive wage, the increase to the mayor's salaries, the committee is recommending $12,714,122, or a $3 million increase to their budget. That's over the governor's request of $9,581,000. The committee is recommending $12,700,000. All right, so that's a $3,132,000 increase because of the competitive wage. Senator, Chairman of Municipal Affairs.
Sizos Masi, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Speaker, I want to thank you and OFB again for working closely with our committee on making sure that the resources that the mayors needed were would be provided to them. I will note that I did receive a message from the executive director asking, based on the mayor's concerns, if they could include a provision, and I had passed out an amendment, that to add a section 10 to this chapter to read continuing appropriation, and that the unexpended balance of the funds appropriated to the Mayor's Council of Guam, MCOG, for fiscal year 2014 shall not lapse and shall be available to the MCOG for expenditure in fiscal year 2015. As you know, the request was to allow the mayors who have saved some of the the funds that they've received from the different programs that are under their purview is to purchase larger mowers and other equipment needed to meet the demands of what they do and as far as grass cutting and other cleanup within the villages. So I proffer this amendment. Everybody has a copy of it, and I hope I can get their support.
On I'm sorry. We'll take a very, very short recess. In order. Senator. Everybody's received a copy of the Munya Barnes Amendment for continuing appropriation for the Municipal Planning Council. Any Senator Uggan? Any other senator? After Senator Uggan. Senator Uggan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, Mr. Chairman, traditionally the Mayor's Council has approached this body after the conclusion of many of our budgets in the past, asking for the authorization to pay prior year obligations. So I was wondering if by any chance there are any provisions incorporated in here right now under the Mayor's Council that would allow them to pay prior year obligations. Otherwise, I would like to proffer an amendment to the amendment that would incorporate.
Section 8 on page 97.
97? Okay. I stand corrected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So on the new section 10, proffered by Senator Munya Barnes. Any other senator? On the Munya Barnes amendment. On the entire Chapter 7, Mayor's
Miss-
Council of Guam. Senator,
Once again, just a technical
Oh,
and the
technical.
renumbering of the sections.
please.
Yeah. It's just to renumber the sections as if you look back at page 94. Line 7, that should be section 3 and then section 4.
Okay.
Okay, just very technical. All the way through to, so her new amendment will actually be section 9.
Okay. I don't deal in millions and single digits. I lose on my finger.
You're welcome, Mr. Speaker.
Okay? So Mayor's Council. Chapter 9, Office of Public Accountability. I understand, Senator McCready, that you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for your guidance on proffering this amendment. And actually, we would like to start with page 98 of the bill in section 2 and 3, part 1, the carryover of FY 2014 appropriations for the Office of Accountability. Notwithstanding any provision of the law, any balance unused funds appropriated to the office shall not lapse and shall carry into fiscal year 2015.
On that one amendment,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also have Section 3, 1907, Chapter 19, Title 1, Public Auditor and Staff Appointment and Compensation of, is amended to read in Section 1907, Public Auditor and Staff, comma, appointment and compensation of the annual compensation of the public auditor shall be $100,000. That's part of the section already. What I'm amending in Section B, the salaries and staff of the Office of the Public Accountability shall be in accordance with the compensation study Appendix A prepared by the Leading Edge Consulting Group. Future amendments to the plan may hereafter be amended upon the written approval of the Magalahan Guahan and the concurrence of Legislature and Guahan expressed duly and appointed resolution.
Senator Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the amendment, I do have a question for OFB as to whether or not, if this is adopted, was it budgeted for in the current budget for the Office of Public Accountability? With the carryover,
It is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Section C, subject to the availability of funds, the public auditor may appoint a deputy and an executive secretary to the unclassified service, and such person shall serve as at the pleasure of the public auditor in accordance with 4 GCA Section 4102A, 4 and 5. The deputy shall be compensated as provided by 4 GCA Section 6206-1.
On that amendment, we're finally making the amendment that we've been talking about for 6 years. No objection?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And finally, or two more, Section D, subject to the availability of funds and notwithstanding any other law to the contrary and consistent with paragraph B of the section and as required by 1 GCA Section 1909I, the public auditor may appoint such full-time or part-time employees in the office as necessary to carry out the duties and responsibilities of the public auditor and the Office of Public Accountability. Upon appointment by the public auditor, such persons shall be probationary employees in the classified service until their qualifications have been verified and confirmed in writing by the Civil Service Commission in accordance with 4 GCA Section 4403E. Subsequent to the action of the Commission, the public auditor may continue a person's probation as provided by 4 GCA Section 4106.
Senator Nicholas.
I'm trying to get this thing done fast.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do understand the intent of subsection D. My concern, or what's on my mind, is whether or not, and why is it that these employees are classified employees versus unclassified employees, seeing that the office is an elected office?
We've had this discussion for at least 6 years, and there's an attempt to try to have consistency. The Office of Attorney General is also elected, but it would be chaos if the entire staff left with the elected leader being unseated. In C, we finally addressed that the public auditor would be able to name at least a deputy and an executive secretary. Now, those would be unclassified and would and could leave with her. But the rest of the auditors could and should remain with the office for some kind of a sustainability and be able to have some historical background of what's happening in the office. Otherwise, if you have a complete emptying of the office, who would know what happened the previous year? So having some classified employees and giving her the authority to hire these two unclassified gives her the same powers that we give to the Office of the Attorney General. Okay? Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I support these provisions, and I want to recognize, as you started to point out, that the public auditor has been struggling with these issues over the last 6 years. But not only has she been struggling with these issues, but so has the legislature, because this is she's the first elected public auditor, and we've seen that office transition during her tenure, and so the carryover provision makes sense so that she can be able to afford the other provisions should this entire amendment pass. On item D, though, Mr. Chairman, it basically, in my reading, it circumvents the whole merit system. At least this recognizes, if the public auditor agrees with this recognizes the public auditor's willingness to subject her hiring decisions through a post-audit conducted by the Civil Service Commission, but yet there's no timeline. So if she hires individuals pursuant to subsection D, there's a caveat that action is subject to an audit by the Civil Service Commission, but there's really no timeline. So theoretically, she could hire someone, he or she, that office can hire someone, and then if the Civil Service Commission never does a post-audit on her hirings, then how would we know if those people were hired subject to the qualifications? So this page is not numbered, but if you follow the third sentence before the end of the paragraph, after section 4403E, I want to add some language that would say or read, or up to 180 days upon employment, whichever comes first. So I think 90 days is sufficient, but I'm willing to go 180 days. And so the way this would work is the public auditor would hire someone, and the Civil Service Commission would have 180 days to determine if that hiring was in accordance with 4 GCA. But if they never do the post-audit on these actions, then that employee cannot be there. So it provides for an accountability from both spectrums and addresses both concerns, I think.
On the Respicio amendment to the McCready amendment, any objection?
And I have that in writing, and I would give it to the legal counsel.
Any objection? Seeing or hearing none? Senator McCready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the previous colleagues for their support as well. And finally, Section E, persons who are employed by the Office of Public Accountability but who are not within the ranks of the professional staff shall be compensated in accordance with the Government of Guam Competitive Wage Act of 2014.
Any objection? Senator Dragon. On the entire section? Oh wait, let's resolve the McCready amendment first. On the McCready amendment, any further comment or any objection? Hearing and seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my colleagues for their support. Appreciate it.
On the section on Chapter 9, the Office of Public Accountability, Senator Uggan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just have a quick question with regards to the provisions. It's already adopted, so I recognize that. But the provisions that were adopted by our colleague or my colleague to my right, the Leading Edge Consulting Group. This was a study that was completed or is just about completed as we speak. My question is because we're authorizing the Office of the Public Accountability to be able to implement the compensation plan that was conducted, or the study that was conducted by the Leading Edge Consulting Group, not the competitive wage process. So my question is really directed, if Mr. Chair, if you would allow the sponsor of the amendment to just share with us and the people of Guam in terms of exactly and what the implications would be of this particular study as opposed to the competitive wage. I think that our people need to understand exactly what the implications are as it applies to the Office of Public Accountability.
The author has stepped out of the room, but I've had discussions with the director, and this is something that she has been instructed by this legislature for almost 6 years, or recommended by us to do, and she has finally done it. And in as much as she has finally done it, I finally support the fact that she's at least recognizing the professional staff that she has, the auditors that she has, and that the non-professional staff will be the competitive wage.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for sharing that with us, because obviously, at least in her opinion, the competitive wage process did not address much of the requirements or the marketability cost of her professional staff. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted that explanation, because you're absolutely right. This particular organization went out and conducted an assessment that was inclusive of not only her staff, but also market conditions and some of the processes that she has had to undertake over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 years in terms of losing her personnel. So this is really more or less not only an opportunity for additional compensation for her professional staff, but it should assist her office in terms of being able to retain the personnel that she has recruited or that office has recruited, and hopefully we'll be able to remain with that office for an extended period of time. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your explanation.
Thank you very much, Senator Duggan. That is correct. We explained your provision. On Chapter 9, with the amendments by Senator McCready. Are we numbering? There's just this one, and then we'll stop. On public accountability standards practices, the Board of Accountancy, $426,500. Do we want to go through the next, or can we break for lunch at this point? All right, we'll take lunch, use the time to 2 o'clock.